political and economical social, political, and economical points were really very nice, and you presented it in a great manner. So, my question is, when you presented the social points during 1970 and 1980, during 1970, the number of crimes committed increased on a marginal scale. But in the next decade, that is during 1980s, it suddenly decreased. The crime number suddenly goes down. So that's what you had mentioned in both the slides. According to your perspective or opinion, what would have been the reason of the sudden decrease or the sudden decrease in the number of crimes committed in a span of 10 years? Because even now, crimes are continue to be committed in whatever country, wherever the place is. Crimes they are continuously happening, and no matter how many policies we implement or the rules we implement and post, nothing is happening. Like, the crimes continue to happen. But during those days, in the early stages itself, the number of crimes committed had come down in a span of about 10 years. So what do you think the reason would be behind that?
Okay, so thank you for the comments first of all. And the crime like 1970 to 80s, like 80s, like some of the crime was actually increasing in like the cities due to like drug wars and like all those there's like a resurgent cartels. Though 1970s, like the crime decreased briefly before it risen in the later part of the 80s. So like there was a decrease in the 19 afterwards in the 1980s. So because of like mainly the social chaos of like stuff like the the counterculture from the 1960s and 70s, like more people were getting involved in drugs, and like this was a very good opportunity for crime to increase in the US. And like people were starting to do it, but like in the 1970s most people were realizing this, they were seeing how chaotic this culture is, and they further moved to the suburban areas of the US, which like again which was more focused by police. There was more safety and stuff there, and like they kind of abandoned the cities mostly, and like the cities were like left to the crime wave in the night throughout the 1980s, and even today like the crime is high in the cities and it's comparatively very low in the suburbs. So like the 1970s, the crime rate reduced because like it was just a shift in American population. Like more people were moving on to the suburbs and stuff. So like that's the reason why the crime has been decreased. And like the cities, because of the lack of resources cities are having, like the crime is still being a major problem today. Like the resource, because like like all the major crimes, like nearly every one of them have been occurring in the cities. Like there has not been nearly as much happening in the suburban or rural areas. It's just the cities, which is like showing like the lack of like problem so searching in the city, which was lack of resources in the cities. Like education is not as good in the city. Like all these public utilities are not as good in the cities. Like all of these, even the police is not as good in the cities, and like a lot of crime is stemming from that. And like the youngsters who were born in the cities are more likely to commit crime and like get involved in like all these drugs and stuff, which is like the major problem right now in the US. Granted, there's some steps being taken, but like it's overall it's overall not been taken. And like there's America, like some places are as safe as the safest country in the world, with like the least amount of crime. And like some cities in the US are higher than like even some of the notorious countries of high crime. So like it's a very big difference you can see. So like yeah.
Thank you, Achit.
Okay, that was a nice question, and it was very covering answer. Over the period of time, America has been evolving in terms of economy. If you observe, specifically in the 1970s and 1980s, which is actually the beginning of investigation, we saw there was a very big crisis of economy. And then in 1990s, we saw crimes rising up. And then we also spoke about the murders, assassinations happening in the 2000s. Now, as a person who has made a complete analysis, Achil, I would like to get your opinion. So, what is the intention behind these killings? What is the intention behind this crime? Like more than even China, more than even Belgium or Japan for that matter, or Tokyo for that matter. America is economically very, very sound. Most of the time, in the timeline presentation you made, economically very sound, and they are cultured, and they set a different trend of westernized behavior. All these are good, but at the same time, America is known for depression, rejection, and youngsters and teens getting isolated. So, what do you think is the intent behind an atrocious crime like this? School killings and robberies and extortions and all that. Just trying to get your psychological view on this particular subject matter.
And it's like again like the rich, like it's kind of tied to like the concept rich v poor we talked about in the presentation. It's like more power versus less. So like colleges in America, it's a very corrupt institution in America. Like the leaders are getting so much money while like the students are facing enormous amounts of debt up to, and like the high school, well, like the schools those schools, like teachers are not getting paid enough, and like students are not getting as well taught because of like all the stress that's built around high school and stuff. And like there's also a lack of mental health basically. There's no support for those kids at all. Like they have counselors, but like they're more like they're not really helpful for most schools, including in my school. Like the counselors are not really helpful at all. And like it's just the mental, and like there's just a lack of mental health. They're continuing to say mental health is important, but like it's really not addressed. Like all these school killers, for example, in 2012 of the Sandy Hooks Elementary School, 2018 the Parkland High School shooting, 2022 Uvalde's elementary school shooting, and many more. All these school shootings, all of them were committed by students that were between 18 and 21. So like the very young age, that like recently graduated high school, and all of them had some type of mental health thing, and like they all had previous signs that they were mentally unhealthy and stuff, that they needed to seek treatment right away, and yet the US was not able to identify all of that. So like that was definitely something that probably led to these crimes, and like it would have prevented these crimes if they were catching those mental illnesses early enough, and like they were able to get it, and like they were able to get some support, because like the support like they're always having support is there, and like there's a lot. However, you need to detect whether they have it first, and like you need to identify them. And another thing that's rising to the crime is like the bigger crime, like in cities especially. It's like not school shootings things, but the cities crime, like it's because there's like some criminals, like they get a petty violation. So like some criminals, like it's good to give everyone a second chance. Like most people will take the second chance. However, criminals of like murderers and like stuff, like many of them were, after like 2 years they're able to get scot free, and like they were able, and then afterwards they commit another crime. Like and then they go to jail only to get released again, and like they commit another time. So it's like the cycle basically. They just put them into prison, and like they're not really reforming. So like there's no like education or reform in there at all for the prisoners. There's no life, and like they just continue this job. Like there's like a parade in like a city in a state called Wisconsin. So like there's a parade there. It was like last year. So like a crime criminal recently got arrested for like just like bank robbery, some small thing, and they got released right away. And then 5 days later, they let a truck into the parade, and like it killed 10 people or something, and injured many others. And like if he was like actually tried and put into prison for for the burglary, and he was given the proper punishment for that, he wouldn't have done that crime too much. And like there is also prisoners need to be, there needs to be education as well. Like they need to, the current system is not working clearly. And like there's something called private prisons, the wealthy are owning, like there's all, and like the wealthy are now having a grasp in everything now, from like education, like to colleges. They can get their kids to go higher into college. They can get their kids to get a good job. Like the wealthier you are, the more likely your kids are going to, and it's tough to climb that social ladder, which is like not letting a lot of people rise in America. Like America's a very good country with lots of talent. So like it's not benefiting most people there. And like some people, it's actually degrading them, which is leading to more crime and stuff from these people.
Okay. Right. So you've been speaking for an hour completely. You definitely need a breather and glasses of water. So very extensive presentation. This is one of your best, and we really liked it. So what's your next week theme, Richard?
I don't know, sir.
Okay.
You can give me one if you want, or like I can just do some
Well-
random topic.
Absolutely. So this kind of imbalance, like why do you think the teens of the 21st century and the teens of say 20th century, like the people who were born after 1975 and the people who were born after 1995, so there is always a distinct differences between these two people's approach. Like um, a person who was a teenager in the 1980s was much more stronger, thinking was more application oriented, and we have got the American Medical Council and also Indian medical associations coming up with this unpleasing reports where the current teens are easily depressed and easily dejected, and the suicide attempts. I recently read the statistics, which was very appalling and very, very disturbing. Like once in an hour, somebody is trying to commit suicide, specifically with adolescent people. So, how to change that mindset, and how to get back that, how to get that strength back? Like the current teenagers are blessed with modern technology, and they have got the state of the art facilities available. So, with all that, how can they become more superpower? Have this as a theme and
Okay,
prepare a
sir.
presentation.
Yes, sir. I
All
will.
right. Okay. Right. So, Mitra, do you have any other questions? All right. Okay. Fine. All right, Ashit. So it's been a long time. You should definitely have a sip of lukewarm water because you've been speaking for almost an hour. But your rhythm was very, very simple, and it was very consistent. So the throat has not been so much damaged. So we'll meet next week, Ashit, with that presentation.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, I will prepare by Mitra, by
Yeah.
money.
Mitra, he says
Bye,
bye.
Achit.
No
Bye,
problem. Bye.
Mitra. Bye, sir.
Bye, Ashit. See you.